Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Penny Insurance, and we are so excited to bring to you guys a webinar about exit planning and really how to financially protect your business. That's something that we are finding is not something that a lot of business owners think about because it's so unpleasant and it requires such careful planning, but that's why we're bringing this information to you. I'm really, really excited here to introduce John McDonough, who is our partner in doing this webinar and is expert on the subject matter. John, I'll pass the mic over to you.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, I'm really glad you're here today. And the topic of the conversation, as you can see from the slide, is planning for what you love, not just what you leave. So I work with successful business owners, founders, and closely held companies, and people who've built something meaningful and want to protect what they've created. My focus generally is advanced life insurance strategies, premium finance structures, and tax mitigation planning for 8, 9-figure estates. So before I get into the meat of the presentation, let me start with a simple question. How's your business doing? And are your taxes starting to feel like your biggest silent partner? Are you paying more than 6 figures or less than 6 figures? Because here's the reality. If taxes aren't addressed early, they quietly erode everything you've built. And part of our value proposition is helping business owners legally, ethically, and morally restructure taxes before and after a liquidity event. Most entrepreneurs spend years planning the exit and maybe a week in planning what happens after the exit. So here's the bigger question. If you sold your business tomorrow, what would your family actually keep? The sale isn't the finish line. It's the handoff from building wealth to preserving it and now multiplying it. And if you don't plan ahead, the tax system will shrink your legacy before your kids ever see a penny. And let's make this real. $100 million business sale, you have federal capital gains, state income tax, estate tax, and by the time the smoke clears, many families end up with roughly half of the value. Half. Let's sit with that for a moment. How do you feel knowing the IRS could walk away with more of your life's work than your children? Exactly. And that's why tax mitigation matters. That's why liquidity matters. And that's why the wealthiest families plan ahead. So let's talk about a liquidity engine. After the sale, yeah, you're liquid. But liquidity isn't just cash in the bank. Liquidity is control. Liquidity is freedom. Liquidity is strategy. It lets you replace lost income streams. It lets you fund estate taxes without selling assets. It lets you equalize inheritances, capitalize family investment vehicles, and create stability across generations. Sophisticated families don't buy life insurance because they need it. They buy it because they understand its structural tax advantages and its role as a liquidity engine. Properly designed life insurance is not a commodity. It's a strategic asset. One asset, multiple outcomes: protection, liquidity, leverage, legacy, philanthropy. And here's the key point. It creates tax-free liquidity exactly when your family needs it. So let me ask you, if you could reposition taxable dollars into tax-advantaged dollars without disrupting your investment strategy, how open would you be to exploring that? Pre-sale versus post-sale. See, timing is everything. Before a sale, we can freeze values, structure trusts, and pre-position leverage. After the sale, we optimize liquidity, reduce its state tax exposure through structures like a PPLI. And if your potential exit is coming in the near future, When do you think you should begin planning? Exactly, right now. And if your exit already happened, when should tax and liquidity planning take place? Exactly, right now as well. So let me introduce the concept of leverage and premium finance. Every entrepreneur understands leverage. Premium financing allows you to use a bank's capital to fund a tax advantage asset while keeping your own capital deployed where it performs best for you. It solves three major issues. You preserve capital, you reduce opportunity cost, and you maximize tax efficient wealth transfer. And inside of a trust, gift tax exposure can be materially, substantially reduced because the gift is only the interest, not the full premium. So let me ask, what would it mean for your family if someone else funded your legacy planning while your capital stayed working at full speed where it currently is? And yeah, there's some risks and considerations that have to be addressed. Interest rates, collateral, policy performance, and the exit strategy. But wealthy families and business owners don't fear risk. What you fear is unmanaged risk. With the right structure, these risks are engineered, modeled, and definitely controlled. So here's a quick example. 46-year-old client, Florida resident, 70 million net worth, 17 million in estate tax exposure. And his biggest fear wasn't necessarily the taxes, but it was the burden his kids would be faced with a forced asset sale during a down market. So we built a premium finance plan funded at $1 to $2 million per year with no personal guarantee, multiple exit pathways. And what was the outcome? Estate liquidity, tax efficiency, and his kids who never had to liquidate assets just to pay the government. See, that's control, that's legacy, and that's planning at the level your success deserves. Business owners excel at building value and managing risk and planning that strategically. Yet many stop doing what made them successful immediately after the exit. So let me ask you, why stop thinking strategically the moment you reach the point where strategic planning matters the most? When business planning and personal planning align, liquidity becomes legacy capital, not idle capital. And here's the three-part framework, and it's simple to use. One, identify your liquidity timeline. Two, model your estate tax exposure. And three, use leverage to make unpredictable taxes predictable. And this is what we cover in your liquidity analysis. So before I wrap up, let me leave you with some important thoughts. You spend your entire life building a business, making decisions that required courage, not comfort. The biggest financial risk you'll ever face doesn't happen while you're building the business. It happens after you've sold the business. That's when the IRS, state taxes, and estate taxes quietly line up to take more of your life's work than your own family. So here's a question. If you don't create a strategy to protect what you've built, who will? The government has a plan for your money, but your family deserves a better plan. So you saw three things today. You saw wealth can compress by 40 to 60% without proactive planning. You saw liquidity as the difference between control and chaos. And premium financing and advanced insurance structures are the exact tools sophisticated families use to legally, ethically, and morally reduce taxes and maximize value. So here's my question. One question. If you could protect your family from a future tax disaster using strategies funded largely with someone else's capital, would it make sense to at least look at your numbers? Now, you don't need to decide that today. You just need clarity tailored to your situation. So here's what I'm offering: a complimentary liquidity and tax efficiency analysis. No pressure, no obligation, just answers. We'll model your tax exposure, liquidity needs, estate planning gaps, and leverage opportunities. And you'll walk away knowing exactly what your family would receive if something happened tomorrow, and exactly how to improve that outcome. This is how smart families stay wealthy. This is how legacies endure. So here's your next step. Either click that link on the screen or copy my email and schedule your analysis. You've worked too hard. You've sacrificed too much to let the IRS become your largest beneficiary. Take that next step, protect what you love, and let's build something lasting together. I look forward to speaking with you. Thanks for the time.
Awesome, John. Have a couple of questions for you. First question is, what is the net worth range that this type of strategy is appropriate for? I guess I'm thinking more like minimum net worth.
Well, from an estate tax perspective, the new tax law coming into effect, the One Big Beautiful Bill, or OBBBA, in 2026 says that there's 15 million between husband and wife. So if you're married, it's a $30 million net worth, where estate taxes start to become part of the conversation. However, using life insurance as a liquidity engine, using certain trust structures, can be done at a $5 million, $10 million net worth. If you think about the Rockefeller family, we don't have to have the wealth of the Rockefellers, but we can use the governance and the structure that the Rockefellers used to make sure wealth passes on to children, and those children use the money according to how mom and dad would want them to use it, or grandchildren or great grandchildren, generational planning. So from an estate tax perspective, 15 to 30 million. From a governance structure, design standpoint, I would say 5 to 10 million.
That makes sense. I was going to ask, obviously the 15 million is much, much higher than it used to be a few years ago. So I find myself wondering, like, should people with lower net worth still try to utilize this strategy? Because maybe at some point with the next, presidential regime, are the rates going to have to go down for this? Is going to go back to the 5 million space?
Well, what we've learned is no tax law is permanent, right? It's subject to the next administration, and then whether or not they can get the lawmakers to vote on a bill and pass the bill. And I would say, let's assume it does stay permanent, right? Let's assume that this 15 to 30 million, if you're married, becomes the new norm, and it increases with cost of living adjustments, every single year, and that number goes up. That still begs the question, at that $5 or $10 million range that we were talking about, that's a significant amount of money to just leave to the next generation without any proper structure, guidance, or family governance around it. And that's where you've seen, from shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve, when wealthy money passes a generation, it's gone by the second or third generation, right? It doesn't take long for people to blow large sums of money, especially when they don't know how their benefactor wanted them to use and spend and invest and save those dollars.
That makes sense. So as far as using leveraged money, like, what is the timeline for doing that? How long does it take? I know with life insurance underwriting at those high amounts, it takes a really, really long time. But then there's also a bank aspect of this as now. So can you talk a little bit about timeline for those people who move forward with the strategy?
Yes. At this level, we're talking life insurance policies in the 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, $100 million range. So when a life insurance company is looking on taking that type of potential liability upon death, underwriting is extremely detailed and scrutinized. So there's always the health insurance underwriting part of the life insurance side of it, where are you insurable? what's your rating, what's your medical history, your doctor's physician statements, so on and so forth. And that part in and of itself takes time depending on the responsiveness of your medical professionals that you get treatment from and how quickly they respond to the request from the underwriter. I typically say that that can take, on the short end, depending on the size of the policy and the amount of doctors, anywhere between 45 days to 120 days in reality, right? But congruent to that, as that starts to crystallize and that starts to form a health rating, whether it's preferred, standard, substandard, tobacco, non-tobacco, any pilot, you know, are we flying an airplane with an education? Are we a scuba diver? All of those multitude of different things. Once we start to finalize in on what that rating is, we can now start to bring in the bank lender, and we can start to get a term sheet that lays out what their interest rate is going to be, what their collateral requirement is going to be, what their terms are going to be, what their loan documents look like. And that part, assuming the clients have clean financials, personal financial statement, balance sheet from a business perspective, liquidity statements, tax returns, proper up-to-date filed taxes, that process can take another 45 to 60 days. So all in all, we're looking at between probably 90 days on the very quick end to 120 to 180 days on the more typical case size.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I was gonna say, what are the biggest, this is the last question, what are the biggest hurdles for business owners when they use or try to utilize this strategy?
From a premium finance perspective, is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle is the belief that you can actually get a bank to finance your life insurance premiums. And then the belief of, sounds too good to be true. And then why haven't I heard about this? And why hasn't my advisor told me that this exists? And what are the risks? And what's the catch? And what am I missing? So it's really just education of all of their trusted advisors, along with the business owner and the high net worth individual. It's education and due diligence with their CPA from a tax perspective, their estate planner from an estate planning perspective, their financial advisor from the financial perspective, right? And most people, let's face it, don't have a very high-end life insurance advisor. There's a few of us around the country, and most people just have an insurance guy.
Perfect. Well, that's all of the questions that I had today for everybody. I wanted to take some time to thank John again for doing this webinar series. It's 2 out of 6. So every other week or so, especially this month, we have a webinar on Thursdays. We'll send out the link for that, but really excited to have him. This is really great stuff and clever usage of insurance for business purposes. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to John directly, and we'll be reaching out to you guys with a recording and the next couple of webinar links.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.